Good morning. We are going to do, I believe, a kidney pose, a kidney series this morning. So come on in. Yeah. So we're going to start in a very familiar position, sure of it. And we're going to start in a butterfly pose. And Neil, do you need another yoga mat for support, you think? No. Cool. So bring your feet about 2 hands length away from your groin. Now, today, if you're a little bit more flexible, you're welcome to bring your heels a little closer. The space is really more for the sensitivity of the lower back. Inhale, lift up your heart and your head and just get a really nice juicy stretch here. And then with your exhale, close your eyes and bring your chin to your chest and roll down, letting your head drop towards your feet. You go to your body starts to resist. And instead of pushing like we're used to, that's where you start to soften. So take a full breath in, and with your exhale, just sigh out. So starting with your eyes closed today, imagine a big starry galaxy. You can look around, see how far you can imagine seeing. And then even just for a moment, pause and imagine how quiet it would be out in deep space. And then imagine where the edges of your thinking could be. So very similar to imagining the starry skies and the distant galaxies. We can't actually imagine the edge of our thinking. Like, oh, and there it stops. And now feel for a moment just even this kind of arc of the sky, this kind of shape of the heavens, and then notice the similarity we have in our skull that houses this expanse of thinking. And then inhale, roll up, and keep your feet like they are and come back onto your elbows. And you might even shimmy your elbows a little closer together so your chest naturally pops up. And then if it's okay for your neck, drop your head back, hanging your skull, your heavens in between your shoulder blades. And take a couple moments to just notice your heart and the feelings with which you're here this morning. And notice again kind of the expansiveness, the reach that we have with our feelings, the spectrum we have. Allow your upper body just to relax down onto the floor if you want. You can also stay in this posture like this for the second half of the pose. And just take a couple moments to notice the energy coursing through your body. And for a moment, contemplate also the boundaries of the energy. Now, if you maybe thought for a moment that the boundary was the edge of your skin, think again. Maybe you can even imagine someone's hand like hovering over your thigh or your chest. And you can actually feel the other person before they touch you. Isn't that true? Could our energy also be connected to this personal space, this kind of bubble of space we have around us? If you're not laying with your back on the ground, go ahead and lay your back down and stretch your legs out, everybody. Moaning and groaning is socially acceptable with yin yoga. Also one of the benefits if you ever practice alone at home. So take a full breath in and just moan and groan and dramatically sigh it out. Oh. And just lie for a moment here in a mini shavasana, soaking in the benefits of the first two postures here. And while you're lying supported by the solid floor, just take a moment to feel and notice your physical body. This is a place where most of us fear expansion. But maybe contemplate how our physicality is linked to being on earth, connected to the nature of earth. Then take your hands to prayer, and like they're a stem shooting up from your heart, stretch your arms straight up to the ceiling. Once again, bring the palms of your feet together. Maybe even feel kind of that holy little empty space between your feet, and lift up your feet so you can see this little eye-shaped, shall I say, place, and try to dive through that little space between your feet, and notice you sit up. Well done. How lovely. Thank you. And then cross your ankles, roll over your crossed ankles, and come into Sphinx. So you want your elbows just slightly in front of your shoulders. It's also okay to make noises coming into the poses. Kind of wiggle around and find the right shape for your body. So in our yin practice, we always want to make sure that we're honoring the uniqueness of our physical body. Or your particular expression of the divine. That not only are our fingertips, our fingerprints different. Thanks to CSI, we all know our irises are different. But do you know that we even have a signature heartbeat? I think it's so cool. That there's something possible and unique in you all the way through each one of your cells. So the kidney and the urinary bladder are the organ pair that we're focusing on. And the element that they're connected to is water. The kidneys are connected esoterically to the planet Venus. And in traditional Chinese medicine, the kidneys are given the name of being the root of life. The root of life. With your next couple breaths in this pose, maybe even notice that you can actually feel your kidneys moving as you breathe. So the second principle is the stillness that we create in the yin poses. And when you still the surface, you can then start to feel what maybe lies underneath. One of the first kind of medical images I saw of the kidneys, I think they must have been like shot with a substance that showed up on the x-ray in a different way, but it was so amazing because it was like these two kind of trees underneath your ribs and the back here. And the shape of it is really, it's very, very tree-like because it has this blossoming up and the rooting down kind of element of it. when we just, I actually don't do so many autopsies these days, but when, when an autopsy is done, you take out the kidneys, and they actually are the shape of the ears, very much so. And they express in the ears. That's the sense organ that the kidneys are connected to. What? Yeah, so all of the organs in traditional Chinese medicine are connected to a sense organ. And so, for instance, and you'll notice that these connections are very familiar in a way. Like, for instance, the liver is connected to the eyes.
Why is that familiar?
I'm about to tell you. No, that's a great question. First of all, think about, have you met someone on the street and been like, oh, they're a drug addict?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, unfortunately, we've all had that experience. How do you know? One of the biggest ways that you know is how their eyes look. Also, when people are really messed up, it's how their eyes look. But the liver also is said to so the health of the liver can be seen in the eyes. Whether it's alcohol poisoning, or all the other drugs, or hepatitis, the whites of the eyes go yellow. And in traditional Chinese medicine, they're very clear about showing how the liver affects the eyes, and it the ability to see, actually. So if your liver's not healthy, you have a harder time distinguishing colors, apparently. Mm. And then slowly come down, wiggle your hips side to side. But we're on the kidneys today.
Yeah, I know. It's just an epiphany.
But it's kind of interesting. And the heart is also an anomaly. The heart is like the origin of all of our emotions, and the heart expresses in the face. So it's not just one organ. But that makes also a lot of sense if we know how the heart works as an integrator and connecting the whole body. Now take your right arm out to the right with your palm facing down, your hand coming straight out of your shoulder. And you can choose either right arm. We're going to do the other one afterwards. Mm-hmm. And then turn your face away from your arm and hug your knees up to your chest, coming onto the outside of your right thigh.
Oh my God.
I am for real. Hug your knees up to your chest. Now, stretch your top arm up to the sky, and imagine that you can stretch your arm in such a way that you actually even stretch the skin on your chest. And then turn your palm and see if perhaps you can hold hands behind your back without significantly lowering your right hand down to your hips. And that perhaps might be yes, and it might be no. Oops. And you might also find that you need a pillow. If your head lifts up off the ground, you want to be able to be supported and relaxed in this pose. Is that enough?
Yeah.
Does anybody else need a pillow? I mean, it's actually a bag of ties. Now, you might find that you can step your your top leg, your left foot, behind your right leg, and help your spine twist more. If you're not holding hands behind you, that's fine. That's exactly where you need to be in the pose. You might find that just bending your elbow and relaxing your arm behind you actually facilitates opening in the whole posture more. You might even find that you can bring both feet onto the ground. So there are some people who can totally roll their hips and bring both hips to the ground, both feet, no big deal. But that's not the point. The point is to be anywhere along that stretch. So you found the right shape for your body. And you've found that you can start to come into stillness, perhaps. And the next piece is that you want to find a willingness to stay. Now, we stay for at least 3 minutes in a yin pose. Usually around 5, between 3 and 5, sometimes as long as 10. So the commitment of staying in the posture is quite small, but still it confronts us, challenges us. Just like staying anywhere does. Staying in a job, staying in a relationship, staying in your family even. So while the kidney expresses in the ear, you know, you can see it kind of nicely, that the ears are so connected to balance, and that's the biggest job the kidneys have in our whole body, and really in our whole kind of biography, our earthly biography. And if your arms are falling asleep, that's actually okay. It still doesn't feel great. So the kidneys are responsible for balance between yin and yang in all of our organs. It kind of rules this polarity of yin and yang. And then roll onto your belly, cry, moan and groan. Maybe just celebrate your ability to feel, part of our earthly life. And even though it's hard, you kind of secretly might want to do the other side. So let's take your left arm out to the left, turn your gaze away from your hand, hug your knees up to your chest. Stretch your right arm up to the ceiling. Spin your palm down and see if you can hold hands behind you. And you might even be able to on one side and not the other. And then maybe bring your right foot onto the ground to help spin you open some more. And rather than trying to avoid feeling the intensity in your lower shoulder, just really go in there and feel it for a little bit. If you had to assign a color to it, what would it be? Or a smell? Or a sound? So this balance of yin and yang in all the organs, the balance connected to how the kidneys are connected to the ears, actually. You know, balance is a big deal. That's where we have the refined mechanism to help us balance. You can even imagine, even more abstractly, this balancing element is really bringing differences into balance. So the dynamicism is part of the vitality. When we're balancing organic processes, organic life, everything is in movement and change, just like we are, just like the earth is, just like other humans are. Even the planets in the galaxy are still all moving. So then we can see how these polarities are actually connected to making rhythms, movement, cycles. So the kidneys are attributed to ruling over all cycles, whether it's the obvious menstrual cycle in women or the actually cellular processes like the Krebs cycle, for instance. Or whether it's the big cycle, the cycle of life and death. So not surprisingly, the kidneys are closely connected to our bones, and especially the bone marrow. So the very innermost part of our bone is where the bone marrow is produced. The kind of beginnings of our physicality, you could even say. And most immediately in our bones, we can see a cycle of life. Like when we're first born as babies, our bones are soft. We also have more of them. But as we grow, some of them fuse together. I mean, okay, all of them, that the way we get less numbers is they fuse together. We don't spontaneously, spit some out. I guess you do the teeth. And then roll back on your belly. Moan and groan. Wiggle your left fingers. Make sure they all work still. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Feelings, huh? And then bring your hands underneath your shoulders and push your hips back to your heels. Coming into child's pose just as a transition. You can take your arms back behind you so it becomes embryo or seed pose. Beautiful. And then inhale, roll up. And stretch your legs out in front of you so you can just sit to the side or cross your ankles and bring your legs forward. You might need to sit on a block, especially if you're sitting a little bit behind yourself. It's a little small on here, but you want it? You can have the bag of ties too. You need one? We're stretching the legs forwards. We're gonna do a caterpillar pose. Cool. Yeah, you can also roll up the end of your back of your mat. So good. First thing is you want to check that you're fully extended in your spine, not sitting behind your hips. If you're like behind your hips, that's when you sit on something. And today, roll the inner thighs up to the sky and kind of push the seat of your butt, the squishy part underneath yourself more. The squishy part. The swishy part. Next level. All right. And we're going to do a Maha Bandha first. And so it's the grand lock, as you can say. So it works with all of the bandhas. You're gonna slide your hands so they're just slightly behind your hips. It's a kind of an efforting place. You're gonna flex your feet. This is the yang intermission kind of thing. So flex your feet, and then you're gonna take a breath in through your nose. You're gonna exhale through your mouth, and then you're gonna engage your mula bandha, lifting up your perineum, your root lock. Your Uddiyana bandha, which is about 2 fingers below your belly button, so you can put your index finger on your belly button, and where your ring finger lands is the spot that you can lightly pull towards your spine. And then we're going to add the Jalantara bandha. So the Jalantara bandha is where your chin and your chest meet, and your chest lifts up to your chin, and your chin reaches down to your chest. We naturally end up doing this in shoulder stand. So we come into the bandha, the Maha bandha, by engaging all 3 of those major locks once our breath is out in Kumbhaka. We hold the locks. When we cannot hold the locks or keep our breath from coming in again, we release the locks first and then take the inhale. Yeah? Does that make sense? So by lifting up your lifting up your chest and reaching your chin down. So it's like, okay. So bring your hands behind you. Take a full breath in through your nose. Empty through your mouth. Release your locks and gently breathe in. So it is these 3 locks, but really it's also the pada and the hasta bandhas. So the pada is the feet and the hasta is the hands. So we're going to do it one more time. So you're flexing your feet, activating them like all your little toes are going, yay, life. Take a full breath in through your nose, empty through your mouth. Release your locks and breathe in. And then walk your hands a little bit forward. We're going to come into this slowly. First, we're going to come into it yang before we soften into the yin. So you're going to walk your hands forward and then just kind of slide the bones, your femur bones back, wheel your hips back, and then glide your chest forward in a little cobra in your chest. So this brings extension to your spine. So especially if your spine is suffering, especially your lower back, you want to work in extension as much as possible. So you can walk your hands a little bit further, and you wiggle your hips back, and you glide your chest forward again. Now, if it's available for you, if you're not protecting your lower back, then you can curve your spine and lower down. If you have a sensitive lower back today, just hang out here, soften, but without dramatically curving your spine. So often our habit of thinking is such that we'll think about ourselves and then kind of the rest of the world. I mean, naturally. That we can think of nature kind of out there, over there. I mean, sometimes being in the city even, we can really even think of it more dramatically as like over there in the countryside. But all of us have this habit of believing that nature is something outside of ourselves. And that this balance of life and death in nature happens over there. But in our nature, instead of just a static kind of set of cells making up you as an individual, it's a dynamic set of cells. So cells are constantly going through this life and death process. In movement, in growth, in decay. But even more than that, our cells actually exchange themselves with other cells from the outside, even. You know, our skin is a membrane that things can pass through, like our whole body, sunlight can move through our body, all of our tissues. You know, we've experimented a little bit like with this, with like putting a flashlight in your mouth when you were a kid or behind your hand. If you haven't done it, suggestion, you can go home and try it out. But light passes through our body. We might not perceive it all the time. But this balancing element of life and death is part of what connects our nature to the Earth's nature. So what marks life on Earth is birth and death. Specifically for us as an individual this lifetime, started with your birth and will end with your death. But if we start to look and realize our connection to nature, we start to realize that we echo all of the elements of nature in our body. Caroline Myss, one of my big inspirations these days, she used to work as a medical intuitive, and now she gives more like wisdom courses. She talks about how she imagines a time in the future where we can actually have star charts done for our whole being. So not just the 12 star signs, but that we should be able to map out all those stars in the universe and their unique position when we were born, and how that affects kind of the inside of our whole body and being. And now inhale, roll up, and just hug your knees into your chest and curl into a little ball. And then lift up your head and roll onto your back. And come into happy baby. So hold on to the bottoms of your feet, pulling on your feet so that your knees come down towards your armpits, rolling your lower back to the ground. If you're in a very flexible, open body, feel free to also straighten your legs if your toes line up with your ears and touch the floor. And only if. So this picture of ourselves being connected actually really isn't just limited to the nature outside there, but really the whole starry heavens, that the whole universe is echoed and a mirror of our being and body. It's easier to imagine it the other way around, right? That in our body, the whole universe is represented. Ancient knowledge even knew this, and all of our organs are connected to planets. You know, astrology has been around for a really long time. Lots of cultures have their own version, different versions. It's not just the mainstream simplifications. And just like in, what's her first name? Maria Thune's biodynamic calendar this year, they a really wonderful tool if you're gardening and farming, especially. But they have this beautiful part in the beginning of the calendar which talks about which days are optimal for planting in the for roots or for flowers or for leaf vegetables. They talk about the different elements of the day and why they're that way. But what was cool is this year's kind of book, it had the review of last year. And there was a part where there was a surprising turn of events at a certain part of the year, and they ascribed it to, it must be the influence of a planet we haven't yet discovered, which I love because it has in its model this room for discovery and the element of mystery. Mystery. Now hug your knees to your chest. Maybe lift up your face and kiss your knees. Thank you already. It might be too soon. And then see if you can braid your right leg over your left leg. So we're going to come into twisted root. So you're going to bring your right knee all the way around, maybe your toes coming around your calf. And now put your left foot on the floor. Lift up your hips and slide your hips to the right. Then drop your knees to the left. This is especially if you have lower back problems. You will really want to move your hips so that it becomes a slightly gentler twist. You can reach your right hand down to the ground and turn your gaze towards the right. Take a full breath in, and with your exhale, sigh out. So our nature still has lots of mysteries we haven't figured out how to exploit yet or harvest. We have not exhausted our exploration of nature, even if there's hubris around, the discovery of the material elements. In ourselves, we have a lot of mystery. And we can have remembering and forgetfulness in weird places. I had a funny experience the other day where I was going through some old files, and I've been practicing writing on the computer, doing some journaling on the computer to help me broaden my ability to write, not just by hand, but also on the computer, and really connect it to the stream of consciousness or whatnot. And I found this writing that I did 2011, so it's only 8 years ago-ish. And I couldn't remember, at first I couldn't remember writing it. And it was so strange because it was in the computer, and so it wasn't in my handwriting. So I actually checked for plagiarism on a plagiarism site to see if it was, some quote I'd written down from somewhere else. But I want to share it with you because it fits so nicely with this topic here. When I silence my worry and stifle my doubts, I can rest in the sanctuary of my body. Breathe into the present moment and arrive home. The microcosm of my body reflects the working of the whole universe from known elements of matter to unknown, from things measured to things undiscovered, from the mundane to the sublime. My body is the most permanent physical thing that I will know, even as cell by cell she continues to recreate herself to house my spirit and shape my voice. To my spirit self, my body delivers my destiny, shaped before my knowing in the primordial wisdom of each cell, as spirit past becomes matter now. To the matter of my body self, my spirit illuminates my heart and animates me, igniting the possibilities of the future. As the past and the future meet in me, and spirit and matter create in me, I arrive at home simultaneously in the world and in my body. My body, the universe, my home. Hug your knees back to center. Unwind your legs. Moan and groan. Let the feels move through you. And then braid your left leg around your right leg like you're giving your legs a good hug. They're hugging each other. Maybe the toes twist around your calf. Now put your right foot on the ground and lift up your hips and slide your hips to the left and let your knees drop to the right, making sure your knees are as high as your hips. Take a full breath in, and with your exhale, just sigh out. So if we in our imagination just really feel into our connection to the universe, our connection to the cosmos, we can feel just really how dynamic our sense of self is, how full of movement, how changeable. And on one hand, that brings up one extreme of that the kidneys rule over, and on the other hand, the other. And this is this, when we contemplate these mysteries, in the space of the unknown, it's very easy for us to slide in all of our fears. Our worries, our doubts. But maybe when you hear some of these stories or some of these pictures, there's something else that happens, this experience of wisdom, where you'll hear something that in your reasonable mind, it doesn't quite make sense yet. But in your kind of heart mind, you know there's a truth there. And this is a little bit what can happen with the experience of the unknown through wisdom, where it's this place where instead of putting in your fears, you can have this element of faith or belongingness. A good reminder to remember that we're in the right place with the right people at the right time. And that celebrates the home of the kidneys in their healthy state, which is this feeling of being at home in our body, at home in our, like our biography, our place, our choices of work, our places, our choices of partnership. That we have kind of purpose in the large scale of the development of the cosmos. In the exciting story of the meeting of heaven and earth. And then unwind your legs and come back to center. A very nice way to come into Shavasana is you can bend your knees and lift up your hips and roll your lower back down to the ground first. And then if your lower back is feeling healthy, stretch your legs long. If your lower back is feeling tender, take your feet out as wide as the yoga mat and let your knees drop and fall back together. Whether your knees are bent or extended, you can also lift up your chest, pinch your shoulder blades together, drag your shoulder blades down your spine like a masseuse, and then drop your ribs back to the ground and relax your hands. Palms facing up, open to receive, eyes closed and trusting. You want to feel that you are supported in this posture. If it's uncomfortable for your arms, you can always bring your hands to your belly. But you want to feel that you can stay present in your Shavasana. And more, it's better for your lower back to bring your feet wide and knees falling together than having your feet in Supta Baddha Konasana, because that just cuts off your lower back. Very nice. Mm-hmm. With your next inhale, invite your breath to the edges of your body. Wiggle your fingers and your toes. Maybe smile and make some beautiful faces. Stretch your arms long over your head and then roll into a fetal position on your left-hand side, hugging your knees to your chest. And then help yourself up into a comfortable seated position, bringing your hands to heart center. And let's close our practice today with one Om. So push down to the solid earth to lift up tall above it. Empty your breath. Take a deep inhale. Bring your prayer hands to your third eye. Invite the divine light. And as you bow forward together, we say, Namaste. And then make sure you're awake. Woohoo! Thank you so much.